Hello and welcome back to my series on Jupiter in the 10th house. This is the 13th and final episode in that series. In this episode, we will look at Jupiter specifically in Pisces in the 10th house. And to illustrate this, we will use the chart of Orson Welles. The first thing we want to know is, what does Jupiter in the 10th house represent? That was what we went over and what we explored in episode 1 of the series. So I'll put a link to that in the description below so you can catch up on the details with that. For now, just the summary of what Jupiter in the 10th house represents is sage-like, transparent, and famous. The next thing we want to know is, what does Jupiter in Pisces represent? I also have done a video on Jupiter in Pisces, and I'll put a link to that as well in the description below if you want to get the details. For now, the summary of it is, Jupiter in Pisces is intelligent, abundant, and accepting. So this accepting nature of Jupiter in Pisces is from the combination of caution with optimism. So they accept ideas. Jupiter in Pisces signifies the ability to accept ideas for evaluation without being judgmental. That's what I mean by accepting. Non-judgmental acceptance. Now that we know what Jupiter in the 10th house basically means and what Jupiter in Pisces basically means, we could go ahead and try to explain what Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house basically means. But we will wind up doing an even better job if we wait and just do one more step. And what step is that? That has to do with lordships. If you use the whole sign house system, which I do and I highly recommend, then you know that if Jupiter is in Pisces in the 10th house, then it's the 10th lord and it's also the 7th lord. So you know that the 7th and the 10th lords are in the 10th house, and you can interpret that alongside the rest of the stuff that we already know. So the 10th house is public and the 7th house is about interaction. If the 7th lord and the 10th lord combine in one planet and go into the 10th house, then the person is very interactive. They know how to interact, to interface with the world and with society. Another way of putting this, or another way of looking at this, is that the 10th house is very visible and the 7th house is very invisible. But since they have the ability to interact and interface, it signifies that they have the ability to clarify the invisible, or they take fantasy and make it reality, or they take ideas and put them into concrete form. With these 3 bits of information, we can get a very good understanding of basically what Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house is all about. For example, this thing of clarifying the fantastic, it goes really well with the intelligence of Jupiter in Pisces and the transparency of Jupiter in the 10th house, because that transparency means basically the same thing as clarifying the fantastic. It means taking something invisible and internal and making it visible and external. So a person with Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house is somebody you could describe as a medium. Like, remember, the word media comes from the word medium. A medium means like a channel or a way of expressing something. So what I mean is, these people have the ability to form a link between simple, tangible things and abstract, spiritual, theoretical, fantastic things. They have the ability to bridge the two. Another thing about the 7th and the 10th lord in the 10th house is interactive, ability to interface with other people. Jupiter in Pisces is abundant. Abundant means creative. So Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house has a lot of creative communication skill. So they will be able to communicate creatively and also to communicate in detail and at length. Finally, the non-judgmental, accepting nature of Jupiter in Pisces goes well with the learned, sagacious nature of Jupiter in the 10th house. So a person with Jupiter in Pisces 10th house is quite well read. They study a wide range of things. They study things in fairly good depth. And the things that they study, they don't just study one viewpoint on it. They study many, many different angles and viewpoints on anything. So for example, Orson Welles is a native with Pisces 10th house, Jupiter. A very good example of a medium, somebody who took fantasy and turned it into a drama, turned it into a play on Broadway, or turned it into something you could film and show in Hollywood. I mean, he's very famous for narrating the War of the Worlds on the radio. People couldn't even tell if it was the actual news or if it was a fantasy story. So also he's a very good communicator, right? Obviously he's a very good orator and very well read and learned, and very many different angles on things. He's actually literally very good with angles in his filming and in his directing. If you look at his chart, you can see that there's a little more going on than just the stock Jupiter and Pisces in the 10th house that makes him who he is. For example, Gemini is rising for him, which is a given if Pisces is the 10th house. But also he has an Aquarian moon. So his ascendant and his moon are both in air signs. And air signs really facilitate communication. And that's one of the main themes of Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th house, is that communicative ability. Furthermore, he has this 5 signs occupied by real planets. It's called Harsh Yoga, which is very good for artists, where it gives like a sense of a taste. It gives taste for enjoyment. So it gives you artistic taste as well. Then you might notice that he has all of his planets above ground, which signifies a person who is a bit over the top and kind of too much. But also you can see that he's really able to extrovert and express. And then the further thing is an interesting dichotomy, like bridge, that he has between abstract and tangible, because that's what we're talking about with this medium thing, is the bridging this fantastic with the realistic. So on the abstract side, he has the 8th Lord in the 1st house. With that, he has the 1st Lord and the Sun in the 12th house. So he's a lot of abstraction going on. And this is why he's really into fantasies and stories. But then at the same time, he's got Saturn right on his ascendant. Saturn rising is very practical, very tangible. So he has to survive this dynamic by being able to bridge the distinction between the fantasy and the reality. So he becomes a storyteller, he becomes a movie maker, he becomes an actor. So now you should be able to see how an individual's chart allows you to fine-tune and get more specific about the potentials that you see in a more basic template, like the template of what Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th represents. And that in turn, Jupiter in Pisces in the 10th is itself a more refined, specified form of the other components, like what does Jupiter in the 10th represent, or what does Jupiter in Pisces represent? And that's how you do astrology, by taking these gradual things into more focus, by adding more and more details and seeing how different potential things grow into specific outcomes. If you want to understand the whole context of your chart, the soil in which your interpretive seeds grow, then visit my website, vicdecara.com, and click Readings. My complete chart report explains each and every nook and cranny of your chart and will keep you occupied in self-discovery for years. I also have 2 groundbreaking new reports. The first of these, Your Nakshatra, organizes your active nakshatras in order of their importance to you and presents the fundamental interpretations for the planets that occupy them. And the newest report, Star Strength, uses a system called Tarabala to unfold 90 interpretations of the nuanced relationships between all the planets in your chart, which paints a rich and detailed picture of how your various strengths cooperate or compete with each other. Order these or any of my reports and accelerate your journey to deeper self-understanding.